Have you ever stopped to wonder if what we call love is nothing more than fear dressed in promises? What if the need to have someone by your side is not about connection, but about escaping the silence inside? What if relationships are not always about union, but about running away from yourself? And what if solitude, the very thing you fear, was the doorway to your freedom? Carl Jung once urged us to imagine our deathbed, the room dark, the sounds fading, and only one question left, whispering in the silence. Did you live your own life, or did you merely follow someone else's script? How many dreams did you bury to keep peace? How many desires did you silence to feel accepted? How many times did you bend your soul until it forgot how to stand tall? Society repeats its commandments like sacred hymns. No one is happy alone. You are incomplete without a partner. Solitude means failure. But what if every one of those beliefs was a lie? What if staying single was not emptiness, but the most radical act of freedom? The only way to live without betraying yourself. The power of choosing yourself. To stay single is not simply to be without a partner. It is an act of courage, a decision that goes against everything society has whispered into your ears since childhood. From early on, we are told that happiness will only arrive when someone else enters the scene. Movies, songs, family conversations, and even traditions repeat the same story. Love is the ultimate destination, and being alone is a kind of failure. But when you pause and truly look at this belief, you begin to see its cracks. Choosing yourself is not a mistake. It may be the very foundation of living a life with meaning. The power of choosing yourself begins with silence. In solitude, there is no one to hide behind, no role to play, no script already written. You are confronted with your own desires, your fears, and also your dreams. For many, this confrontation is terrifying. That is why people rush into relationships, sometimes unhealthy, just to avoid hearing their own inner voice. But if you dare to listen, if you accept the silence instead of running from it, you discover a strength that cannot be found anywhere else. Choosing yourself also means protecting your time. How many hours of life are consumed by obligations that are not truly yours? When you are single, you decide how to use your energy. You can invest in your personal growth, in building projects that reflect your soul, or even in simply resting without guilt. Relationships can be beautiful, but they also demand compromises that are not always fair. When you are single, those compromises are no longer chains. You are free to say yes only to what aligns with who you really are. There is also the question of self-worth. Many believe their value increases only when recognized by someone else. A partner becomes the proof that they are lovable, worthy, and important. But this logic is fragile because it places your identity in the hands of another human being. When you choose yourself, you reclaim that value. You no longer wait for someone to tell you that you are enough. You begin to feel enough simply because you exist. That shift changes everything. The way you walk, the way you speak, the way you relate to the world. Choosing yourself is not about closing the doors to love. On the contrary, it prepares you to experience love in its most authentic form. When you are whole alone, you no longer enter relationships out of fear or need. You enter because you truly want to share. There is no desperation, no invisible chain tying you to the idea that you cannot survive alone. Instead, there is freedom, and from freedom, love becomes deeper, lighter, and healthier. The power of this choice also lies in breaking illusions. Society paints loneliness as emptiness, but the truth is that many people feel more alone inside a relationship than they ever did while single. Being single, when embraced consciously, is not loneliness. It is connection with your essence. It is learning to enjoy your own company, to laugh at your own jokes, to walk through the streets without needing a hand to hold. That independence becomes unshakable confidence, and confidence is magnetic. Finally, choosing yourself is the most radical form of honesty. It is saying, I will not betray myself to fit in. I will not kill my dreams to be accepted. I will not bend my soul just to keep someone by my side. This honesty may cost you approval, may bring criticism, may even create fear at first, but in exchange it gives you something priceless: peace. And peace is what many spend a lifetime searching for in others, without realizing it can only be found within. So when you hear the voice of the world telling you that being single is weakness, remember this: it takes much more strength to walk alone in truth than to walk accompanied in illusion. Choosing yourself is not a backup plan. It is the beginning of everything. It is the ground where self-love grows, where dreams take shape, and where life stops being borrowed and starts being truly yours. Freedom that relationships often hide. When people think of relationships, they often imagine freedom multiplied, the freedom to love, to share, to build together. But the truth, which few dare to admit, is that relationships also create invisible walls. Behind the romance, there are limits, expectations, and silent agreements that slowly reduce the space where you can truly be yourself. Freedom, in many cases, is the first thing to disappear, and most don't even notice until years later. Think about how subtle it is. You no longer decide entirely for yourself. Every choice, from the simplest to the most profound, must be filtered through another person's perspective. What you eat, where you go, how you spend your money, how you use your time, all these decisions are shared, negotiated, sometimes controlled. Love is often confused with surrender, and surrender, little by little, becomes dependence. In the name of harmony, many end up sacrificing their individuality. To stay single is to remember that your freedom is non-negotiable. You wake up and you are the only voice that decides your day. No explanations, no compromises, no endless debates to justify your desires. This is not selfishness. It is self-respect. Freedom is not about doing everything without limits, but about choosing according to your truth. And when you are single, that truth can flourish without being suffocated. Another hidden aspect is emotional freedom. In relationships, there is often an unspoken pressure to always play a role, to be the strong one, the caring one, the reliable one, the attractive one. Masks become heavy, but taking them off seems dangerous because it might disappoint the other. When you are single, the mask falls. You don't need to pretend to be in a good mood when you're not. You don't need to hide your sadness. You don't need to act in order to be loved. Your emotions are yours alone, and that autonomy is priceless. There is also the freedom of time. Relationships consume hours, days, years. They bring constant demands, calls, messages, visits, family, obligations, celebrations. All of this can be beautiful when balanced, but it easily becomes a burden. When you are single, your time returns to your hands. You can study, travel, read, create, explore new skills, or simply rest. Time, once again, becomes a gift you give yourself instead of a resource spent trying to meet someone else's expectations. Financial freedom is another point often ignored. Many relationships mix money with emotions, generating control, guilt, or dependence. When you are single, every choice about your resources is truly yours. You can invest in what matters to you, save for your dreams, or allow yourself small pleasures without having to justify them. The financial burden that often poisons relationships disappears, leaving space for independence and clarity. The deepest freedom, however, is the freedom of identity. In relationships, even unconsciously, we adapt. We become what the other admires, what the other expects, what the other tolerates. Over time, that adaptation can erase essential parts of us. Staying single protects your identity. You can dress how you want, speak how you feel, explore who you are becoming without fear of rejection. This is the kind of freedom that builds unshakable self-confidence. It is important to understand that none of this means relationships are inherently bad. They can bring joy, support, and growth. But the romanticized image hides the price many pay without realizing the slow erosion of freedom. To be single is to see clearly that your wings were never meant to be cut in half. Freedom is not negotiable. It is the ground of your existence. In solitude, freedom is no longer an illusion. It becomes a daily reality. The ability to make choices without fear, to live according to your rhythm, to honor your inner voice. All of this is what makes staying single not a failure, but a conscious path. And once you taste this freedom, you discover something powerful. You don't need to beg for space in someone else's life. You already own the vast space within yourself. If you want to uncover the hidden patterns shaping your relationships and desires, the Jung Method will help you. The link is pinned in the first comment. Solitude as a mirror of truth. Solitude is often treated as a punishment. Many people avoid it at all costs because, in the silence it brings, uncomfortable truths begin to surface. But what most don't realize is that solitude is not emptiness. It is a mirror that reflects who you are when no one is watching, when no one is asking, when no one is demanding. And that reflection, though sometimes difficult to face, is the most important encounter of your life. When you are constantly surrounded by people, voices, and distractions, your true self hides behind the noise. Opinions of others, expectations of society, and the roles you play all build layers over your essence. But when you are alone, all those layers begin to fall. You are left only with yourself. And in that moment, questions arise. Who am I when no one is around? What do I truly desire? What am I afraid to admit? Solitude forces you to confront these questions with honesty. Many fear this confrontation because the answers are not always pleasant. You may discover that you are not as happy as you pretend to be, that some dreams have been abandoned for the sake of approval, or that you have been living a script written by others. But it is exactly in solitude that the possibility of change is born. If you never face the mirror, you will never know which parts of yourself are real and which are illusions. Solitude also reveals strength. At first, silence feels heavy, almost unbearable. But with time, you discover that you are capable of carrying yourself. You realize that your worth does not depend on constant validation, that your identity does not require applause, and that your emotions can be faced without fear. This strength becomes the foundation for authentic living. Once you learn to stand firm in solitude, nothing and no one can shake you. Another aspect of this mirror is creativity. In solitude, the mind is no longer consumed by the constant presence of others. Ideas flow, imagination awakens, and inspiration emerges from silence. Many of history's greatest works were born in solitude because the individual dared to face the mirror of truth and create from it. Being single gives you this same opportunity, to use solitude not as a weight, but as fertile ground for creation. In relationships, it is easy to get lost in another person's reflection. You begin to see yourself through their eyes, to value yourself through their recognition, to shape your choices according to their desires. But solitude returns the mirror to its rightful place, before your own gaze. It teaches you to value yourself without needing external confirmation. And when you learn to love what you see in that mirror, you are no longer at the mercy of rejection, abandonment, or judgment. Solitude also brings clarity. In the silence, confusion dissipates. You can distinguish what truly belongs to you from what was imposed. You can separate real dreams from borrowed ambitions. You can finally hear the inner voice that was always drowned out by noise. This clarity allows you to make decisions aligned with your essence, instead of repeating patterns that were never yours to begin with. To embrace solitude is to embrace truth. And truth is not always comfortable. It may tell you that you need to change paths, that you need to leave behind certain habits or even certain people. But truth is also liberating. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And the courage to live according to it is born in solitude. So when the world tells you that being single means being empty, remember this. Solitude is not emptiness. It is revelation. It is the mirror that shows you the person you truly are and the person you can become. To avoid solitude is to avoid yourself, but to embrace it is to step into a freedom that no relationship can ever provide. Dreams that can finally breathe alone. When you are constantly involved in relationships, there is an invisible negotiation happening all the time. Your dreams are no longer just your own. They are weighed against another person's comfort, their approval, their plans, and their limits. Little by little, without even realizing it, many people suffocate their own dreams just to maintain peace. But when you are single, something powerful happens. Your dreams finally have room to breathe. Dreams are fragile in the beginning. They start as whispers, as ideas that seem too big or too far away. To make them real, they need space, attention, and consistency. In relationships, especially those where partners do not share the same vision, dreams are often postponed. Later, when things are calmer. Later, when we have more money. Later, when we both agree. But later never arrives. And so, many lives are lived without ever touching the dreams that once made the heart beat faster. Being single removes these excuses. The responsibility is entirely yours, but so is the freedom. You do not need permission. You do not need to explain yourself. You do not need to compromise what matters most. If you want to start a business, travel to another country, dedicate yourself to art, or change careers, the only approval you need is your own. This independence is what allows dreams to finally come alive. Another important aspect is energy. Dreams require focus and dedication, but relationships often drain that energy through conflicts, routines, or endless compromises. When you are single, all that energy can be redirected to what truly fuels your soul, instead of spending hours trying to repair what is broken in. A relationship, you can invest that time into building what is new in your life. This redirection transforms not only your future, but your entire sense of purpose. Dreams also reveal your authentic self. They are not random. They are signals of your deepest essence. When you allow them to breathe, you allow yourself to exist fully. Too often, people abandon their dreams because they fear being misunderstood, rejected, or left alone. But staying single removes that fear. You begin to live for your own vision, not for someone else's approval. And in doing so, you discover a fulfillment that no external validation could ever provide. There is also the matter of courage. Pursuing dreams demands risks. Many people avoid them because they are worried about how their choices will affect a partner or a relationship. But when you are single, courage becomes more accessible. The only person who will bear the consequences of your risks is you, and that makes the leap into the unknown less heavy. You gain the freedom to experiment, to fail, to rise again, and to keep walking without dragging anyone else's expectations along with you. Another gift of being single is the ability to dream without limits. In relationships, dreams are often adjusted to fit the possible. But when you are single, there is no one to shrink your vision. You can dream as big as your imagination allows, And that expansion alone is transformative. Even if the dream changes along the way, the very act of giving it room to breathe is already an act of liberation. Finally, fulfilling your dreams while single brings an unmatched sense of pride. You know that what you achieved was not handed to you, not dependent on someone else's support, not limited by compromises. It was yours, born from your courage, your persistence, your belief. That pride builds unshakable confidence. And once you know you can create a life from your own dreams, you never again accept a life built only on someone else's. So when people say being single is a limitation, remember this truth. Relationships often suffocate dreams, while solitude allows them to breathe. Dreams need air, space, and freedom, and nothing offers that better than walking alone, guided only by your inner voice. The peace of living without masks. One of the greatest weights that relationships carry is the silent expectation to always play a role. From the very beginning, we are subtly taught that love means showing our best side, controlling our flaws, and performing what is expected. In this process, many people put on masks so naturally that they forget who they really are. To stay single is to step into the rarest peace of all, the peace of living without masks. Masks are born from fear. Fear of not being accepted, fear of being abandoned, fear of not being enough. In relationships, these fears are amplified because you constantly measure yourself against another person's reactions. You worry about whether you're attractive enough, successful enough, patient enough, interesting enough. Slowly, without realizing it, you begin to edit yourself. A word left unsaid here, an opinion softened there, a desire hidden in silence. Each of these choices may seem small, but over time, they create distance between who you are and who you pretend to be. Solitude removes this constant editing. When you are single, you can finally speak without calculation, act without fear, and feel without censoring yourself. The peace that comes from this authenticity is indescribable. You laugh when you want to laugh, cry when you want to cry, and stay silent when silence feels right. There is no one to judge, no one to demand explanations, no one to mold your emotions. That is why solitude often feels uncomfortable at first. It exposes the raw self. But once embraced, it becomes the most liberating experience of all. Living without masks also strengthens identity. Many people who spend years in relationships forget their own preferences. They no longer know which music they truly like, which foods they enjoy, or what activities make them happiest, because so much of their life was shaped by compromise. Being single restores that clarity. You can rediscover your authentic tastes, your voice, and your rhythm. The simple act of asking yourself, "What do I really want?" becomes an anchor of self-respect. Another dimension of peace without masks is emotional honesty. In relationships, there is often pressure to minimize sadness or frustration, so as not to create conflict. But when you are single, you can embrace the full spectrum of your emotions without fear of burdening someone else. This doesn't mean isolating yourself in pain, but rather allowing yourself to feel what is true. Emotional honesty leads to healing, and healing brings inner peace. Living without masks also transforms how you see others. When you are no longer pretending, you start recognizing masks in the people around you. This awareness gives you compassion, but it also gives you discernment. You learn to distinguish genuine relationships from superficial ones, and you stop wasting energy on connections that demand performance. Instead, you seek environments where authenticity is welcomed, not punished. Another powerful aspect of this peace is that it makes future love healthier. When you are accustomed to being authentic, you no longer settle for relationships that require constant performance. You understand that real love does not demand masks. It welcomes the whole. truth of who you are. By staying single long enough to discover this, you raise the standard for every future bond. Without masks, life becomes simpler. The endless calculation, should I say this? Should I hide that? Will they still like me if I reveal this part of me? Disappears. Simplicity gives rise to tranquility. You realize that being true is not only easier but far more powerful. The people who matter will stay, and those who cannot handle your truth will leave. And in that separation, there is no tragedy, only clarity. Finally, the peace of living. Without masks is a form of spiritual freedom. To be authentic is to align with your essence, to live in harmony with the truth that exists within you. This alignment creates serenity because there is no longer an internal war. You are no longer divided between what you feel and what you show. You become whole. And wholeness is the deepest form of peace. So when people say being single is lonely, remember this. Solitude gives you the gift of authenticity. It removes the pressure to perform, to pretend, to bend. It allows you to exist as you are, without disguise. And nothing is more peaceful, more healing, and more powerful than that. Building strength from within. Strength is one of those qualities that many admire from afar, but rarely understand where it truly comes from. Society often teaches us that strength is about endurance, about carrying others, about never breaking down in front of anyone. Yet true strength is not built in the eyes of others. It is built in silence, in solitude, in the moments when no one is watching. That is why staying single, far from being a weakness, can be the greatest path to building real, lasting strength. When you are alone, you do not have the constant support of a partner to rely on. At first, this may feel frightening, but slowly, you discover that the absence of external support pushes you inward. You learn to trust your own judgment, to comfort yourself, to pick yourself up after a fall. Every time you succeed in facing life's challenges without leaning on someone else, your confidence grows. You realize you are capable of much more than you thought. Strength from within also comes from responsibility. In solitude, there is no one else to blame for your choices. Every decision is yours alone, and so are the consequences. While this can feel heavy, it is also empowering. You begin to see that you are the author of your life, not a passenger. This awareness forces you to grow, to take ownership, to build. Resilience. Strength is forged not in avoiding responsibility, but in embracing it fully. Another source of strength is emotional independence. In relationships, people often look to their partners to regulate emotions. They seek comfort, validation, and reassurance. While this may feel safe, it can also become dependence. Being single teaches you to handle your own emotions, to process sadness without fear, to celebrate joy without needing approval, to sit with discomfort until it transforms. Emotional independence is one of the most powerful forms of strength because it frees you from the constant need for external reassurance. Solitude also builds mental strength. Without the distractions of constant interaction, you are forced to face your thoughts. At first, this can be overwhelming. The mind races, anxieties appear, old memories surface. But the more you practice sitting with your own mind, the clearer it becomes. You learn to organize your thoughts, to challenge destructive beliefs, and to find clarity where before there was only noise. Over time, the mental chaos turns into mental discipline, and that discipline becomes a foundation for everything else in life. Strength from within also means resilience. Life will bring challenges whether you are single or not. But when you are alone, you develop a unique resilience because you learn that survival does not depend on someone else holding you together. You discover that you can face losses, disappointments, and failures and still stand tall. This resilience becomes an unshakable confidence. No matter what comes, you will endure. Physical strength too can be nurtured in solitude. When you are single, you often have more time to care for your body, to exercise, to rest properly, to listen to your physical needs without compromise. The discipline of caring for yourself physically spills over into emotional and mental areas as well. Each act of self-care is a reminder that you are capable of sustaining yourself. Another important dimension is spiritual strength. In solitude, questions about meaning, purpose, and existence arise naturally. Instead of distracting yourself with constant activity, you are given the chance to reflect, to seek, to connect with something larger than yourself. This spiritual grounding becomes a source of calm even in the midst of storms. You know who you are, you know what you stand for, and that clarity makes you unmovable. Being single also allows you to face fear directly. Fear of loneliness, fear of failure, fear of not being enough. All of these surface when you are alone, but instead of running, you learn to confront them. Each fear you face loses its power, and in conquering those fears, you build a kind of strength that no external validation can ever provide. Ultimately, building strength from within means becoming whole. It means no longer depending on others to hold you up, to define your worth, to give you purpose. It means standing on your own 2 feet and knowing you are enough. From that place of strength, any future relationship you choose is no longer about filling a void. It is about sharing abundance. So when people say being single is weakness, remember, solitude is the training ground of true strength. It strips away illusions, forces you inward, and teaches you to rely on the only person who will be with you for a lifetime, yourself. And once that strength is built, it can never be taken away. Society's lies about happiness. From childhood, society feeds us a script about what happiness should look like. It begins with fairy tales and continues with movies, songs, advertisements, and even family advice. The message is repeated so many times that it becomes invisible, like background music. Happiness means finding someone, falling in love, getting married, building a family, and growing old together. To deviate from this path is treated as failure, as if there were only one legitimate version of a meaningful life. But this script, when examined closely, is full of lies. Lies that enslave countless people to a model of happiness that was never truly theirs. The first lie is that happiness depends on another person. You are told that without a partner, you are incomplete, broken, or lacking something essential. This belief makes people enter relationships not out of genuine love, but out of fear of being alone. And fear never builds true joy, it builds dependence. Real happiness cannot be outsourced, it begins within. When you are single, you are confronted with this truth directly. If you can find contentment in your own presence, then any future love becomes addition, not salvation. The second lie is that being single is unnatural. Society paints solitude as a problem to be solved, a phase to escape from as quickly as possible. People ask invasive questions. When will you settle down? When will you find someone? The assumption is always that something is missing. Yet history, art, and philosophy are full of examples of individuals who thrived precisely because they walked alone. Being single is not unnatural. It is simply another way of living, one that can be just as rich, meaningful, and fulfilling as any partnership. The third lie is that marriage guarantees stability. For generations, people believed that entering a formal union was the ultimate insurance against loneliness, poverty, or failure. But reality proves otherwise. Many marriages are full of conflict, emptiness, and dissatisfaction. Stability comes, not from a piece of paper or a ring, but from the strength you build inside yourself. Being single may appear less stable on the surface, but it allows you to create a foundation of self-reliance that no external circumstance can destroy. The fourth lie is that children are the only path to legacy. Society insists that your value is measured by what you leave behind through family. But legacy is not limited to bloodlines. Legacy can be art, ideas, acts of kindness, or the simple example of a life lived authentically. When you are single, you are free to redefine what legacy means to you. You may or may not choose to have children, but your worth is not reduced to that choice. The fifth lie is that solitude equals sadness. In truth, solitude is neutral. It becomes painful only when it is compared to an idealized image of togetherness. Many people inside relationships feel lonelier than those who live single lives with authenticity. Loneliness is not about the number of people around you, but about the connection you have with yourself. If you are at peace within, solitude becomes sanctuary, not punishment. Another lie is that your value increases when you are chosen. Society romanticizes the idea of being picked as proof of worth. Engagements, weddings, anniversaries, all are celebrated as validations of success. But being chosen by someone else does not automatically mean you are living truthfully. Many are chosen while hiding their real selves, while sacrificing authenticity for acceptance. The only choice that truly proves your worth is the choice you make for yourself, to live honestly, whether single or not. These lies persist because they benefit the system. A society where people fear solitude is a society easier to control through products, appearances, and traditions. You are told to follow the script, so you will keep consuming, keep comparing, keep doubting yourself. But when you step out of the script, when you claim happiness on your own terms, you become powerful. You no longer need constant validation because your sense of fulfillment is rooted within. The truth is simple but radical. Happiness is not a formula handed down by society. It is a personal journey, unique to each individual. For some, it may involve partnership. For others, it may not. Both paths are valid. The danger lies in believing that only one version exists and that every deviation is failure. So when society tells you that happiness requires someone else, remember, that is a lie designed to keep you afraid of yourself. The greatest joy comes when you no longer measure your life against expectations, but against your own truth. And sometimes the truest form of happiness is walking alone, unafraid, and unapologetically free. Being single as radical freedom. Freedom is a word that everyone desires, yet few are truly willing to embrace. Most people say they want freedom, but when it confronts them in the form of solitude, they run from it. They prefer the comfort of belonging, even if that belonging comes at the cost of their authenticity. But staying single, when chosen consciously, reveals itself as the most radical form of freedom a person can experience. This freedom begins with the absence of compromise. In relationships, even healthy ones, compromise is constant. You adjust, you negotiate, you give up pieces of yourself to keep the balance. Sometimes this is small, but over years, the accumulation becomes heavy. Being single lifts that weight. You decide where to go, how to live, what to pursue, and what to let go. Your life is yours in its entirety. That autonomy is radical in a world that conditions us to always live for others. Radical freedom also means the ability to reinvent yourself at any moment. Relationships often lock people into fixed roles: the caretaker, the provider, the dreamer, the stable one. Over time, these roles can feel like prisons. When you are single, you can change without explanation. You can explore new identities, hobbies, and lifestyles without fear of disappointing someone else. Reinvention becomes natural, and with it comes an exhilarating sense of possibility. Another dimension of radical freedom is the right to protect your own energy. Many people lose themselves in relationships that drain them emotionally, financially, or spiritually. They remain out of fear, habit, or social pressure. But when you are single, you have complete control over the boundaries of your energy. You decide who enters your life, how long they stay, and what influence they carry. No one can take more than you are willing to give. That control over your energy is priceless. Radical freedom is also about truth. In relationships, truth is often softened to avoid conflict. You hide parts of yourself, you say what is expected, you silence what could hurt. But in solitude, you no longer need to hide. You can face your truth fully, even when it is uncomfortable. Living in truth is radical because it challenges everything society teaches: to fit in, to conform, to be agreeable. Choosing to live by your truth, even if it means walking alone, is one of the boldest decisions you can make. This kind of freedom also changes the meaning of love. When you are free within yourself, you no longer seek love to fill a void. You no longer accept unhealthy patterns just to avoid loneliness. You love because you want to, not because you need to. And that choice makes love purer, stronger, and more authentic. Paradoxically, the more you embrace solitude, the more capable you become of experiencing real love, not dependence disguised as affection, but connection rooted in wholeness. Radical freedom also defies cultural expectations. You will hear phrases like, "You're too picky," "Time is passing," "You'll regret it later." These voices are not truth. They are echoes of fear passed down through generations. To remain single by choice is to silence those voices and write your own story. It is to prove that happiness does not have a single formula and that fulfillment can be found outside of the script. In the end, being single as radical freedom is not about rejecting relationships. It is about refusing to betray yourself. It is about choosing authenticity over conformity, peace over performance, self-respect over approval. It is about recognizing that solitude is not punishment, but power. And once you taste that power, you realize you're not missing anything. You are whole. So when society insists that being single is weakness, remember this truth. Being single is not the absence of love. It is the presence of freedom. And freedom is the greatest gift you can ever give yourself. If this message resonates with you, I invite you to stay with us. Follow the channel, support this journey, and accompany the daily content we share here. Each day brings reflections that can inspire, challenge, and strengthen your path toward authenticity. Don't just listen today. Walk with us tomorrow. And let's continue discovering together the power of living true to yourself.